Manu Bennett.
I wish I could say something in Scottish.
I wish I would even know where to start without offending someone. I know my limits. But welcome to the bus stage once again.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. I think this is what, about the 5th time now this year? About 4 or 5 times?
Yeah, I'm becoming an MCM local,
Yeah, well, it's great. We absolutely love having you up here. And what I want to do straight away, because every time I've seen you in the videos, the one thing I've loved what you've done is your interaction with the fans. You know, straight away you're saying hi to them, you're talking to them, because you seem to be all about the fans at Comic-Con. Would you say that's true? It's all about the fans for you at Comic-Con?
You know, it's like when you do what we do, it's kind of an unreal experience, really. I mean, you know, I still don't understand celebrity. You know, I came from a small town in Australia. I grew up in anyway. Probably like Glasgow. It's called Newcastle. You know, there's an English version of it as well.
That's where I'm from.
Oh, you're from Newcastle?
Yeah, I'm from Newcastle.
Somehow you've improved your accent.
I'm hiding it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, like I grew up in a real kind of an industrial town, and you know, I would never have really thought. Well, you know, I mean, we all have ideas and dreams and whatever, and you know, But you know, the reason why I got into the arts, I mean, to be honest, you know, is because I lost my mother and brother, you know, when I was like 15 years old. Both of them were killed in 2 different car accidents. So at the age of 15, I was kind of, my head was reeling, you know, I didn't know how to go to school and look at the blackboard and go like, oh yeah, MC squared equals, it just didn't make any sense to me anymore, you know. You know, unfortunately, my childhood was kind of like, I guess, stolen from me in a certain way, you know.
Yeah.
But the one thing that caught my attention was dancing. My girlfriend was a ballerina, and they needed some guys to come in and perform in a production of West Side Story. So me and a friend of mine, we were, you know, the only 2 guys that came along and did this sort of this dance performance. And at that time, I didn't really understand what it was that was coming out of me, but it was expression. You know, it was emotional expression, and it sort of agreed with the way that I was. You know, I needed to get something out, and I didn't know how to say it in words. People at school didn't understand. You know, you never actually wanted to talk about the subject that was bothering you. But if I went and I danced, then somehow it was coming out naturally. So that was the emotional side. On the physical side, I started playing rugby. And, you know, I actually made it to the point where I could have made the Australian schoolboy team.
Wow.
You know, and... but on the weekend that I was meant to go for the trials for the Australian team, I was meant to go to the trials and try out for that team. I also had to do a dance. I had to do ballet. I was dancing in Swan Lake on the same weekend. And so I had to make this choice. Well, actually, it wasn't even my choice. Basically, my dance teacher, who had given me like 2 years of free classes because she knew what had happened to me and had supported me throughout. Yeah. She kind of said to me, Manu, you owe it to us to be in this show. You know, you're the only person who we've got for this role. And I agreed with her. I owed it to her, but at the same time, I had to give up going for the Australian rugby union team for schoolboys. You know, Billy Elliot had to get past his father, right? Well, I had to get past the New South Wales first 15 team, which was kind of, you know, a few boys I ran into in the future, you know, they said, what the hell happened that weekend, bro? And I was like, well, I had to go dance in Swan Lake, and they were like, you know, but that was kind of like the dichotomy of my younger years as an emerging artist, was how to pull myself out of, you know, I was quite a chaotic young man, you know, like I had my degree of, you know, biffs, just because I was on the edge all the time, you know, emotionally I was suffering. And so if anybody sort of like, you know, stood on my toes, I had a fast fuse. But the more that I did the arts, the more that I found that I could let that out either with the artistic expression or playing rugby. I still kept on playing rugby up until I was about 22, 23. But then I started with the acting seriously, and then I got the role of like Crixus, you know, and I mean that role in so many ways couldn't have summed up who I was more, you know, having been through the rugby trials and gone in there and thrown myself physically into a hard sport like that, gladiatorial sort of on the field sport. You know, that wasn't there, but then there was also this need for Crixus to touch the finger of Navia through the bars, you know, and having lost my mother, I knew what that felt like. I knew that yearning, I knew that necessity to somehow break out of being the hard man, being the man who just ran headfirst into the opponent on the rugby field, to being a man who would accept the fact that he had a heart and had to reach out for that female connection. So somewhere in that role I really discovered myself in the arts, but also, you know, it was on the page, you know. I mean, I didn't write the role of Crixus,
yeah,
but I mean, I was cast for it, I believe, because the writers saw that I had the capacity to play a very, very hard gladiator warrior kind of guy, and there was a softer side that really needed saving in a certain way, you know. So that was that, you know.
Now, you're saying that it was took an emotional toll on you. What about the physical side as well? Because obviously Spartacus, you have to be physically strong. What sort of kind of training? Was it tough? Did you have to get up early in the morning? So how did you kind of keep yourself fit for the role in that sense?
Well, I mean, the role in itself had so much physical requirements that, you know, every day I was fighting some kind of battle, you know, so there was hours upon hours of physical stuff that we did in Spartacus. I mean, we had a team of guys, the stunt guys, there was about 50 of them. There was probably about 20 of us that had various roles in the acting. And the whole time, everyone was competing. You know, it was big time competition. Like, nobody wanted to be the guy who looked weak.
Yeah.
You know, so...
Like me, basically, is what you're saying.
And, well, no, brother. I mean, well, you know, we get the airbrush, you know.
Yeah, we're fine.
But even then, you know, we had some guys that weren't physically, you know, we had tall guys, we had shorter guys, we had some guys that, you know, I mean, Gannicus, the guy who played Gannicus, right, he wasn't a big guy. I mean, you know, Dustin's about 5'9", 5'10", and not really a giant, and not a big build, you know, yet he was one of the most convincing roles as a gladiator, just because he had it inside of himself. And I think if you went back in time and you realized who some of the big warriors were in our history, they didn't necessarily have to be the big guy at all. I mean, you know, look at people like Napoleon. Look at the Napoleon complex. I mean, the guy was like 5'4" or something, 5'3". You know, Caesar, the original Caesar, all these guys. You know, it's funny when it comes down to thinking about who's a warrior, what actually constitutes a warrior. Because sometimes it's not that physical size at all. Sometimes it's just the amount of, you know, ticket that you got.
Yeah. Before asking fan questions, you're talking about kind of physicality, and on Arrow's Deathstroke, which is an amazing character, you've really kind of shown that he's not bad, he's not good, he's kind of in that grey area. Do you find it tough kind of showing that relationship between you and Oliver, and try and still have that physical dominating presence as Deathstroke? Is it easy jumping between the two? Tough question, I know.
No, it's not really. See, playing Crixus, I wasn't the lead of that show. Playing Slade Wilson, I'm not the lead of that show. But, and you know, also, and I'll say this very, very clearly, not being blonde-haired and blue eyes changes the person that I am and the thing that I actually affect out there in the world in terms of role modeling. You know, if I go to South America, all these young brown boys suddenly come out of the woodworks with, like, you know, Crixus hairdos going like, oh, a brown guy represents us, you know, and stuff like this. You know, so sometimes I've gone around and I say that I'm a New Zealand Maori, which I am, and for many a year I thought that was what I represented. Then I did that DNA test. You know, you can send away in heritage.com for your blood test. Well, I found out that I'm 64% UK because my grandfather's from Peterhead. So I always thought that it was my Maori genealogy that gave me the fight that made Crixus, or the whatever that was behind Deathstroke, but he's Scottish.
Hey, bombshell there, ladies and gentlemen. Deathstroke is Scottish. Yes.
Maybe, but my grandfather was meant to have been like he played like First Division during the war, Second World War. He played First Division for Aberdeen or something. In football, and he was the Navy boxing champion for the Scottish, Navy or something like this as well. So sometimes I've been a bit myopic because I got brought up in Australia and New Zealand. I've only looked at myself as being from that part of the world and only my Maori side. But recently I've gone into trying to rediscover, my actual roots, and so while I'm here on this trip, I'm going to go down to Peterhead and see what I can find out a little bit more about my grandfather.
Yeah, probably explains why he looks so good in a tartan cap. He's rocking it right now, isn't he? Yeah.
I just put this on in the bathroom and I was like, shit, it's not too bad. It actually fit, somehow it fits. Yeah.
Looks good. Why don't we have some fan questions now? Does anyone have any fan questions? Marcus is in the middle there, he has his microphone, he'll come across to you. And we'll give you an opportunity to talk to Manu. We'll just get the microphone turned on.
Just come out here, darling. Come out. Just come and grab a seat.
Oh, well, you can't say no to that.
Well, if it's not working, then if you've got a question, just come up and jump up. There's the hot seat. It's got the hot seat. You can put this book.
What's been your favourite role so far?
I think my favourite role has to be Crixus. But I say that because it was a completed piece of work. It's like being a painter, and you say, what's your favourite painting that you've done? We had to have finished the painting, for starters, Azog was the biggest project in terms of how many people on the planet probably watched it, but it was very quick. I only spent a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, creating that character for Peter Jackson, so the experience wasn't as, Spartacus was an immense, totally enjoyable, amazing series with really wonderful people. As a guy, as I've already explained who I am a little bit, it was such a pleasure to go on and play that role for me every day, and the scripts were incredible. Every time I read a Spartacus script, I was like how can every ending of a Spartacus script would just have you like in a head spin, it was really such amazing stuff. The stuff that I've just come back from Vancouver. I just shot episode 5 and 6 of the 6th season of Arrow. Woo! Episode 5 is called Deathstroke Returns, and episode 6 is called Promises Kept. So there's a lot of material that's just been put into 2 episodes, and it really it worked me. It worked me as an actor. I haven't felt that worked since some of the stuff that I've done on Spartacus, some of the really harrowing stuff. There's so much content in these 2 episodes that evolves a whole new side of Slade that, I don't know whether the fans are going to like it or not, to be honest, because it's so personal. But if I had to back myself with the way that I am as an actor and the way that I try to just portray truth of character, it's going to be something new for the audience, I think, but we're meant to watch that silly box in our living room to feel something, just to feel it. Then I know that what I did for the character was I put him on the edge, and I kept on pushing him toward the edge, because we all live on the edge in some way or another, And I think as an artist, if you can give it up, if you can put yourself out there, and that people can actually feel it. A lot of people go like, oh, these kids are like, oh, he plays Deathstroke and stuff like that. And wow, but you'd be surprised what's really going on in here and here when you watch that screen. It's like when you listen to music, it's not just the words that's going on, it's the melody, it's the signal that's coming through the radio or whatever. It's how it hits you emotionally in your head and in your heart. So, I think the stuff that I've done in this latest season, it's going to be compelling, but how it's going to compel the audience, I'm not quite sure. I find my son, and there's a whole bunch of ramifications to that, yeah. So who knows, maybe in a year or 2, Arrow will be my favourite show. that I've done.
Well, you have to come back in a year or two and then tell us, and we'll get an update. We'll just get you back every year, and we'll keep asking until it's... So you're part Scottish, so after all, this is your hometown.
Exactly. Thanks for having me. Yeah. Cheers, darling.
And sorry, what was your name there? Sarah. Thank you very much, Sarah. Round of applause for Sarah there. Do we have any other fan questions there? Marcus, come along. I believe the microphone's...
Are you going to speak it?
Is it working now?
You know what? Take the microphone with you. Come here. We've set precedent now. Might as well continue.
How you doing?
Sorry, what's your name?
I'm Callan. I'm from Brisbane. So.
Are you from Brisbane?
Hey.
Go the Broncos.
No, they lost.
Oh, really?
So my question is, what was it for you in Spartacus working along such big personalities? Like you got the guy who plays Animaeus, and you've got Lucy Lawless for one. What was it like for you working along such massive personalities?
Lucy Lawless. Well, first of all, the reason why I got Spartacus, the show, was because of Lucy Lawless's husband. Lucy Lawless is married to a guy called Rob Tappert, who's a Texan, who decided to come to New Zealand and use the tax breaks there to make the shows Xena and Hercules. And he cast Lucy Lawless as Xena, and then during the production of Xena they obviously got it on and got married, you know. And so Lucy married the producer, right? Now, during one of the episodes of Xena, I got cast to play Mark Antony. And in that particular episode, there was a big sword fight between Mark Antony and a whole bunch of Romans. You know, and I had this sword fight. It was funny because they gave us these swords that were made out of rubber. And when we were on set sort of doing the rehearsal before the sword fight, I said, these aren't even hard, why don't we just hit each other with them? And all the stunt guys were like, yeah, okay. And so we came onto the set and we were just whacking each other with these swords, eh? And I was like getting welts and stuff like that, but whatever. You know, same as playing a game of rugby. You know, so we were hitting each other and it looked real. You know, if I hit them, they'd go like, ah, you know, and they'd put spray blood on. But Rob Tappert, 10 years later, when he was casting for Spartacus, because he was the producer of that show, he remembered me from that episode and called me in for an audition. And about 2 months later, I didn't even think I'd got the role because I hadn't heard from them for so long. But Rob Tappert rang me up, and I was sitting like in a bird aviary in a zoo, and he was like, "Hey Manu, it's Rob Tappert here," and I was like, "Oh hey Rob, hey," and he went, "Listen Manu, we've been looking at your tape, and you know, all the producers really kind of like your take on Crixus, but unfortunately we can't offer you the role." And I went, I was thinking like, why did this guy rig me up? Was he just rubbing it in? And he was like, no, Manu, we can't offer you the role unless you promise us that you won't hit our lead actor, Andy Whitfield. And I was like, what? And he goes, because, you know, 10 years ago you came onto our show and you were like hitting all the stunt guys with the swords. And I know that you really like to get into your roles, but, you know, we have to make sure that Andy's going to be okay. And I'm like, Rob, I promise.
Did you though?
No, I didn't keep the promise. I hit everybody on Spartacus. It was kind of like part of the, I don't know, it was like one of the things that I made a point of doing on the show was really dominating the scenes with Crixus. And so, you know, the best way to do that is to actually be really stepping forward physically. But I made sure that I was doing all of the training so that when I was fighting people, I was missing them with the sword, you know. But a lot of people were intimidated in some ways. There was one time where they actually asked me, they said to me, look, you know, Andy's feeling a bit like things are getting a bit close and stuff like that, and can you step it down a bit? And I said, okay, yeah, sure. And I didn't. Just because it was really healthy for the role, and I gave that role everything. But I actually, you know, I don't think in the whole 4 seasons of Spartacus I ever hit anybody, you know, except for once, and it was Andy Whitfield. But they had these shields. They had these shields that were made out of wood, and I mean they were heavy, and they were made out of wood. And they had this one scene where I was turning around and I was hitting Andy Whitfield with the shield. And they said, okay, you've got to stand back and make sure there's enough distance so you don't, you know. And I said, guys, really, this shield is way too heavy and way too dangerous. Like you guys have said to me, you know, we've got to keep a distance and stuff like that, but this is a real dangerous moment. I don't think we should be, and they said, listen, if you do it right, it'll be fine, okay? So just, when you're spinning around, just do it like this and you'll miss him, right? And I'm going like, okay, there's his face. I'm missing him by this much, okay. Surely enough, in the take, I do this 360 spin, I go like this, and the strap on my wrist broke. And the shield went out and went smack right into Andy's face and split his eye, the corner of his eye open. And I'm standing there going like, don't look at me. Like, honestly, I warned you guys about this. Somehow, miraculously, the next morning on set, every shield was made out of rubber. Now, I don't know who stayed up that night making rubber shields, but somebody did. There must have been 5 or 10 people from the art department that stayed awake that whole night making plastic shields or rubber shields. But yeah. But, you know, Lucy was like playing chess. Lucy Lawless is such a thinking actress that if you look into her eyes, you're screwed. Lucy looks at you and she goes, this is my game. And if you watch the scenes that I played as Crixus, I never look into her eyes. And I did it on purpose. And what was going on behind my eyes all the time is one day I'm going to kill you. Even though I was sitting there going like, yes, Domina. Of course, Domina. And
sorry, unfortunately, we are out of time.
Well, brother, it was awesome working with those people, especially Andy Whitfield. Andy Whitfield was an incredible artist, you know. So, Andy, good on you again, brother. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming along and listening. I don't know how many, I only got through 2 questions. I tend to talk a lot because I like to explain things. But thank you very much for paying any interest in who I am or the work that I do. As I say, you know, this career didn't come to me easily, and I don't take it for granted. I have a huge responsibility to play characters and roles as an artist, and I put everything that I can into that. So, you know, by virtue of you being here, thank you for acknowledging my work. I put my heart and soul into it, and I'll keep on doing that. And, you know, hopefully I'll see you again here sometime in Glasgow.
Yeah, let's hear it for your fellow Scotsman, it seems, Manu Bennett!